Hola chicos, so this chapter you are learning how to replace both the indirect and the direct object pronouns. As a reminder, in capítulo preparatorio, you reviewed what you learned in Spanish 1 by replacing the direct object nouns and the indirect object nouns. So just really quick, I want to remind you that the direct object is when you're answering the question, verb affects what or verb affects whom directly. Like yo estudio español, study what? Español, that's your direct object. Yo escucho a los chicos, hear whom? The boys. So the boys is your direct object. And then your direct object pronouns are mete, lo, nos, os, los, las. Sorry, mete, lo, la, nos, os, los, las. And again, really quick, when you replace it, they go in front of the conjugated verb. In this case, Spanish, the it. In English, you put it after the verb, but in Spanish, you put it in front. And if it's no, you put it in front again of the verb, of the conjugated verb, after the no. And when you have two verbs, you can put it either in front of both verbs or at the end of both verbs. I'll go over this in a minute when I get into the double object pronouns. The difference between the direct and the indirect is whom is receiving the action. So you have to answer the question to whom. So again, if you look at this sentence, David me compra unos boletos. So David is buying. What is he buying? The what is still the direct object. But to whom is he buying it for? So he buys tickets for who? Me. That's why it's to whom, a me. That would be the indirect. So in this case, when you replace your indirect, you go mete, le, nos, os, les. And again, with indirect object pronouns, you normally need a clarifier. So to clarify the me, it would be a mí, te, a ti, le, a usted, the le, a él, le also goes for a ella. For nos is a nosotros, os a vosotros, and the les, again, three people share the clarifier, a ustedes, a ellos, or a ellas. And again, when you replace the indirect object with the indirect object pronoun, they go in front of the conjugated verb again. All right? So in Spanish 1, you learn how to replace each one of them separately. And that was what you did when you were reviewing it in Capítulo Preparatorio. In this chapter, you are now going to replace both of them together. And think of them as, in terms of which object pronoun are you going to place first, think of them as ID, indirect, direct. So I for the indirect, D for the direct. And I say ID because you're trying to ID something. And I'll tell you a story in a minute of how to deal with the placement. So the indirect, again, it is to me or for me, to you, for you, to him, to her, to you, or for him, for her, and for you, to us, for us, etc. And then your direct object, when you're replacing both the indirect and the direct object pronouns, you're normally only going to go with these four direct object pronouns, which is the lo, la, los, las. So the combination would be me, lo, me, la, me, los, or me, las, te, lo, te, la, te, los, te, las, nos, lo, nos, la, nos, los, nos, las, os, lo, os, las, os, los, os, las. However, for the le and the les, You will not say lelo. Okay, so you see this rule here. You will not say lelo, lela, lelos, lelas. Nor would you say leslo, lesla, leslos, leslas. You have to change the le or the les to se. It becomes celo, cela, celos, celas. That would be the exception to the rule. And you have to remember, in this slide, I've given it to you. You have to remember that the direct and indirect objects are affected by the verb directly and indirectly. They are not the doers of the verb, okay? Again, they are being affected by the verb. So careful, do not conjugate the verb to who is doing the action, who is receiving the action. By that, I mean, when you look at this example here in the slide, Nicolás me dijo la verdad. The person doing the action of telling is Nicolás, so your verb needs to be conjugated to Nicolás. Who did he tell the truth to? To me. That is my indirect, so me. What did he tell? The truth. That is your direct object. So when you're replacing both, the me, which is me being told, truth, direct object, la verdad is feminine, me la, that's what you're replacing. But Nicolás is still doing the action of telling, so the verb dijo is conjugated to Nicolás. It's not conjugated to me. That is what I'm trying to point out. Nicolás dijo. But the me la, the indirect and the direct object pronoun, goes where? In front of the conjugated verb, like I mentioned earlier when we were going over the direct object pronouns. In English, you say, Nicolás told, see, you put the verb first, it to me. But you notice in Spanish, it is Nicolás, it to me. Actually, it's to me, it told. Okay. Same here. Susana te trajo un pastel. Pastel, masculine. Direct object would be the lo. Who did she bring it to? To you. So that's the te. Te is the indirect. You received it. So te lo. But Susana is bringing the cake. So Susana trajo. Te lo trajo. Again, when you have a conjugated verb, it always goes in front. And let me tell you the story of the ID. Think of this sentence as a family going on a day trip or going to the park, okay? So the parent will be the subject pronoun doing the action and the verb. The kids in the family would be the indirect object and the direct object. When there's one parent that goes out with the kids, it's always easier to ID the kids in front of the parent. You always want to make sure that the kids go in front of you so you do not lose sight of the children. You do not lose them. If something was to happen to them, you always see them in front of you. So you see how the placement, the ID, you're IDing your kids, indirect first, direct after, but they go where? In front of you, okay? So by in front, I mean the verb is the parent, kids go in front of the parents. You can, however, when you have two verbs, you can put them. So now when you have two verbs, you have two parents, mom and dad, or mom and dad, however you want to go at it. But the parents, there are two of them. Only when you have two parents can you put the kids, the ID, in front of both parents, or they can go behind both parents because now you have two adults dealing with two kids. It's easier. But if you put the kids behind, remember the story, you do not want to lose them. So make sure that they hang on, they hold hands with one of the parents and with each other. So you see how in this case, when you put it behind, it becomes one word with the parent. Never ever put the kids in between the parents, okay? Keep the generations separate. So parents are the older generation, the kids are the next generation. So the parents are still very much in love, at least in my perfect world, that's how I want to view it. So put the parents together, the kids together. If they go in front, they go as separate individuals. If they go behind, they need to hold hands with the second parent. And you notice how, in this case, because you're adding 2 syllables, if you put it behind, you need a written accent. So if you add 2, go back 3. With the, with the infinitive, if you add 2, you go back 3. But if you're using it with the present progressive, then you go back 4. Basically, you're keeping the same accent on the same syllable. Regalar, preparando. So it goes on that same one. That's why for the infinitive, if you add 2, you go back 3. For the present progressive, if you add 2, you go back 4. Preparándomelos. Okay. But again, like I said, if there are 2 parents, the kids can go either in front or behind. But if you only have 1 parent, then they always have to go in front of that 1 parent. It can never ever go behind. And this is how you would replace the direct and indirect object pronouns. Adios.